there's different attitudes that I hear when it comes to things like food and exercise. Some people, I would call them quite lenient. You need this in moderation, you need that in moderation. Um, that's not my opinion. I think that if you want really good health, if you want really good fitness, you have to you really have to invest. You have to invest in the exercise that you do. You have to invest in the way you eat, the way you sleep, all these sorts of things. And sometimes my opinions are not received very well. And typically, this is often by like medical professionals sometimes say, well, people aren't all ready for that sort of a thought process. So every so often, I get a bit agitated with nutritional advice sometimes, lifestyle advice, because I'm like, it's not going far enough, and people are being not shown the direction, so how to take things seriously. This is my opinion anyway. This is what I think. And every so often I hear a podcast or I see a video, and I think, me and this person, we're on the same wavelength. So that's who I'm introducing you to today. My friend Manjit Singh Dol is with us today. Him and I first spoke actually probably 10 years ago, I think, because I heard him on BBC Asia Network. And since then, I heard him on, I think, 2 podcasts maybe as well. So that's who I have with me. And the title of this podcast episode is really the keyword no nonsense, because my perception of Manjit Singh is he's a no nonsense kind of guy, right? So that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you today, Manjit. Am I right? Are you a no nonsense kind of guy, or did I get that wrong?
Hi, Robbie. Firstly, thank you very much for having me on board. And secondly, am I no nonsense? I believe in what I believe in. I research in what I research in, and I try and give as many facts as I possibly can. So some people might see that as no nonsense, but I don't think I'm no nonsense.
Mm,
It's all about each individual person's lifestyle. And if you
mm,
ask me a question, I will answer it to my honest opinion
mm.
about what you've told me, and that's it. So it could be no nonsense, yeah.
This is sort of my perspective, which is, I was listening to you talk with the ladies on changing suits, and I forget the exact how the conversation went, but we'll get into that in terms of your perspective and some of the stories that you have and the advice that you've given to people. But maybe let's start with your story, your personal story. Like, what things happened in your life? I think not everybody ends up so super fit. I've seen your photos, and I'm looking forward to sharing them with people who listen to this. And you're cut up, or I'm sure you go through phases, and you go through, got the biceps out. So, you know, um, of course, we increasingly see people into their fitness and so on. But I think there's probably a few reasons what happens in people's lives. I'd love to touch on mine as well in a moment. But tell us what happened, Manji. What were some key events in your life that made you feel like, you know what, I want to take this seriously?
Well, I was always into sports, if I'm going to be honest. When I was younger, I was dyslexic, but never diagnosed. My
Mm,
age group, we weren't diagnosed back and then. So uh, for me, I was always known as not very intelligent, and therefore studying, reading, and writing, I didn't really get into it
mm,
because being dyslexic, I learn in a very different way, and I didn't know that at the time. So I
mm,
was very, as you can see what I'm doing now with my hands, I'm very hands-on. So I got into football. I was a little bit too small compared to all my peers, so I didn't do too well. I got into the goals because the ones who can't play always sit in the goals, and my reflexes were fast. And then I got myself into martial arts, and I absolutely loved it. And that was the start of my fitness. And I've got many black belts in different styles of martial arts. And that's where I pushed myself, and my parents did. They pushed me into that, especially as I got older, 16, 17, 18, when they didn't think I was going to get into education. And I was doing very well in my martial arts, competing in British championships and things like that. And then I moved on to European titles and all sorts. And that's where my love of exercise came from. And then a few years of doing that, my dad turned around once and said, "So, how are you going to earn some money? You're going to work with me in the shop, or you're going to get a job? What are you going to do?" So for me, it was I don't want to be at home. All my friends have gone to university. How do I get there? So I went to university as a mature student, and the first degree I did was a Bachelor of Science in chemistry. No A levels, no GCSEs or CSEs, whatever they're called. I can't remember anymore, right? And just went there as a mature student, and that was difficult. But that's where I was diagnosed with um, dyslexia, and then people were helping me, and I had different understanding. And I got into chemistry, biochemistry side of things, moved into pharmaceutical, and then once you get a job, your fitness goes out the window. So my fitness was still heavy with the martial arts. Then I finished as my education went up a little bit, and then as I got a job, and as I got married, the martial arts definitely slowed down. But I joined the gym because I wanted to stay healthy and fit. Didn't know what to do at a gym, if I'm going to be honest with you. But I joined one and I went there like everybody else does, picked a few weights up, jobs are good. And then in my career, I then did a master's degree in analytical and pharmaceutical science. So I was working with medication and pharmacology and all of that. So my background was quite heavy into that. And then one day I'll be honest with you, one day my wife went to Derby to visit her family and left me to my own accord for the first time ever since we'd been married. But what she did is she had all my clothes ready in the spare bedroom. And in the spare bedroom, we had a floor to ceiling mirror. And so I went in there, got the clothes that she left for me, putting them on, and I could feel there was someone behind me. And I thought, someone's behind me. I turn around and I have a look, and it was me in the mirror with my fat belly out. And I was like, oh my God, that guy does not look like a former European kickboxing champion or karate champion. And that's when I decided I was fit, I was strong, I can fight, not a problem. But I wanted to look fit and strong and be fit and strong from the inside. And that's where I think and this is about 20 odd years ago, this is where I decided that I actually want to look the part. When I was doing the martial arts, I'd love to look like Bruce Lee, and I've been down lower body fat than him since then. But I'd love to look like Bruce Lee. But my focus was to be able to do martial arts and win tournaments, not the way I look. So the byproduct was just try to be healthy. So then, about 14 years ago, probably a bit more than that, actually, 15, 16 years ago, I decided to do a personal training qualification while I was working in the pharmaceutical industry, just to learn a little bit more for myself. And I'll be brutally honest, I don't think it taught me anything. I don't think there's anything in there. So I then employed a personal trainer who was an ex-bodybuilding champion. He trained with, and he was a student of Dorian Yates. If anyone listening might know anything about bodybuilding, Dorian Yates is one of the greatest bodybuilders ever to live. So he was his student. So I learned that style, and really dramatically my physique changed. I understood what time of attention, what to do with exercise. And then I asked him for some nutritional help. And he was like, Manjit, you got biochemistry knowledge, you got this knowledge, figure out your own plan. That got me intrigued. I started then researching and learning, and then, going to cut a long story short, I decided to give my job up, and then I went and re-educated myself and got myself another Bachelor of Science with honours in obesity and weight management, clinical. Then from there, I did a master's in science in obesity, weight management, and clinical weight management. And I'm just completing half, I don't know. It's a research PhD in, surprise, surprise, obesity weight management. And that's all I focused the last 15 years of my career. And I think it was about 14 years ago that I got contacted by yourself when I went on the BBC radio show. But yeah, so that was my background. And then from there, I just took it seriously. And I was like, you got to practice what you preach. So I've been doing, like you said, phases. So I'm a big believer of, you can call it a yo-yo diet, but it isn't really a yo-yo diet because it's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change. So sometimes I decide to add on excess muscle mass. Usually the time of my birthday, I decide to drop my percentage body fat very, very low, sometimes
mm,
dangerously low, just to test my knowledge, see if I know what I'm doing. So yeah, that's how I got into my fitness and where I am now. And now I just help other people with their lifestyle. And I totally understand it's all about each individual. Not everybody's got my goals. Not everyone's got my
mm,
determination, my motivation, and what they want out of it. You have to want to have a goal, and then your reason why has to be powerful to that goal.
mm,
Otherwise, you're not. A lot of my clients are diabetic, so I help. With my clinical background, I help put diabetes in remission. Sometimes it's people who are just perimenopause or menopausal, and I help them with day
mm,
to day. And then it's just people like me who want to get rid of the stomach, get the flat stomach, or go even further than that and go
mm,
into a six pack. So the no nonsense bit depends on what your goal is. I've made a couple of world boxing champions, IBO
mm,
world um, cruiserweight and middleweight champions and so on. Again, they will definitely say he's no nonsense because
mm.
that's what their goal is. Their goal is to
Mm.
become a champion. I'm not going to say, oh, it doesn't matter, never mind. You ain't going to get that from me from there. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Thank you so much, Manjit. There was so many things to pick out from that. I found some interesting similarities, although between you and I, although you felt fairly confident in terms of physical activity at school, I was the opposite. I was very overweight, really struggled. But when it came to football, it was funny that we had the same sort of thing, but the opposite way around. I felt like I was too tall to play football. I felt all of the others, they could run circles around me, and I just could. I was too gangly, and I couldn't like. So I thought that was quite interesting. And then, you know, everything you've said after that it's interesting your about the dyslexia, but also being very physical in your nature and not so much. It's amazing to me how much you've been able to study, but more from I almost want to say from a physical point of view rather than a textbook academic writing it down or typing it, whatever. And that's really interesting to me. But the one thing I'm hearing underlying about what you're saying, but you're not using the word yet, is scientist. I see and I hear experimentation, and I see and I hear constant improvement, and like you talked about goals, you're constantly thinking, okay, well, I'm going to try this now. Okay, what worked well about that? What didn't work so well? And then it led you on, and your whole journey is not a static journey. It's a very dynamic, constantly evolving, constantly improving. And so the term scientist comes to my mind. You worked in pharmacology, now very much focused on obesity. So um, And when I say the words no nonsense, to me that's almost like another way of saying scientific. Maybe that's kind of like the semantics of it, right?
Well, Robbie, that's what I am. If I'm honest, I
Mm,
am a scientist. With a
mm,
bachelor of science and master of science. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's not just I am a scientist from what I've done. I think my thinking and my core has always been, that kind of scientifically wanting to know what happens, why, how can I improve, why did I go wrong, what
mm,
happened. I think that's really important. And on my social media, every single post I do, I always put at the bottom, keep moving forwards, because that's what
mm,
we have to do in life. And that's what science is all about. Because some of my textbooks back when I did my very first degree uh, in the 90, I think it was 89, 90, whatever. I don't know what it was now. It was a long, long time ago, right? And when I did the first degree, a lot of things have changed in science. Things that we believe were right then isn't right anymore, that we know from years of research, and on the Google and internet thing, we
mm,
get a lot of people now who just read bits of science and use it for their own benefits. But science is quite a big and complex kind of subject at the end of the day.
I'm really glad you said that because one of the reasons why I contacted you was because I've written some books over the last two or so years, and really they're about science. And I should explain a bit of the work I do professionally. So the things I do related to exercise and so on is a very small part of my work. It's more of a hobby. It's more of an interest. Actually, my primary work is more around technology. Um, and in the work that I do with technology, people think that the hardest bit is, teaching the new technology or keeping people up to date with new technology, all of that sort of stuff. That's relatively easy. The hardest bit is killing off old habits. That's the bit goes unseen, and people don't like they totally underestimate how hard it is for me. I think, off the top of my head, 85%, maybe 90% of my work is about bringing people away from the old habits. And then once they've done that, then usually you take them on the journey. I'll give you a very classic example, right? Um, so I did this contract a few years ago, and I always tell this story. This organization, they were moving all of their people from Outlook email system to Google email system. And in those days, when they had the Outlook email system, and it wasn't Outlook causing this, but they were changing a lot of things. And this is what it was like in their office. People would come into the office, they would boot up the machine. This was only 2012, by the way. They would boot up the machine, and then they would go and have cups of coffee, tea, have a chat, come back half an hour later, oh, it's still booting up, go have a wander around, come back later. Oh, I think it's booted up. Then they will load up Outlook. Oh, okay, I've got 5 minutes. I'll go over. They used to waste 45 minutes every morning booting up these computers, right? So my team, we came in, we changed all of their systems. Like we changed all of their systems so that as soon as you sit at your desk, no one's stopping you from getting your coffee or whatever, but as soon as you sit at your desk and you press a button, you can expect within 30 seconds to be able to check your email and, all of this. And so as you can imagine from our point of view as consultants, we're like, this is going to blow people's minds, right? You know where this is going. This is going to blow people's minds. And so people didn't embrace this. It was
No.
absolutely surprising to me, right? There were some, don't get me wrong, it wasn't everybody, but there was a whole bunch of people that didn't embrace this. And there were, rebuttals or sort of objections. Well, when am I going to make time for coffee now? No one's stopping you from making coffee, but you can be sure when you come back to your desk, the computer's ready, right? And these were the sorts of problems we were dealing with. But the one that actually kind of destroyed it for me was because they were moving to Gmail. So meaning that inside a browser, and that you got to go to google.com/Gmail. It's all on their corporate system and all this sort of stuff. And we set all this up for them, and we're teaching them. And I said, look how fast it is. Like, what do you think of the speed compared to when they were on Outlook, they would press the new button and they have to, there's like a latency, you wait a while and then you type in and then you have to wait a while. And I said, well, just show me, send an email that you would normally send. How long did it take? And they said, oh, yeah, it's really fast, but I can't sort the emails the way I can in Outlook. And that's what I just want to touch on. Like that immediately, that might not, like, why is that a big deal? And the point I'm making is that when people get so used to certain habits or certain things that they can do, when they see the new, some people, they've got this confirmation bias or this sort of like connected sense of security, safety, stability with what they're familiar with. And some of these people have been in role for like 35, 40 years. So the first thing they're looking for is, how can I apply my world to this new thing that you think is good for me, right? They're being told you got to use this new technology. So the reason why I'm stressing this is because I see this a lot in health and fitness, and I only am moonlighting in fitness with the odd conversation here and there. You're in the thick of it, so I would love to hear like if you might say to me that doesn't happen in fitness, but I'll be super surprised. In health, I'll be super surprised when it comes to helping people with obesity and thinking about all the goals that you described, and maybe you can think of some more. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with trying to shift people's minds to different ways of thinking? Maybe you have some techniques. I'd also love to know what you hear. This would be really fascinating.
Well, first thing is, Ravi, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about change.
Mm,
I call it a habit coaching program, my programs,
mm,
because what we're doing is you're changing habits. And the first thing I always say, people come to me because they want to change. You don't come to me if you want to stay exactly the same. Simple as that. And like when you mentioned that once they're told to do something, people want to apply it. I get a lot is, I don't like this. I don't like that. I
mm,
don't like, I can't do, I can't, I won't. And no matter how many motivation seminars you hear, you'll always hear it. The person who believes that they can, and the person who believes that they can't.
mm,
Because you're telling yourself. So in all of my style of coaching, I always find out what someone's reason why is. Why do they want to do it? That's the most important thing. So in your example, I'm guessing the employers wanted efficiency, want speed, they want to get things done so they can get more in the day, and they don't mind the coffee. But at the end of the day, if there's a half an hour lag or 45-minute lag, they want to save that half an hour and they're happy with that 15 minutes. I'm a chemist for maths, saying very good, right? So they're happy with that 15 minutes. And it's the same type of thing that I say to people. So if someone's never exercised before or only exercised at school, they come to me, they're about 35, 40, and they've never exercised except for at school, then I'm not going to get them on the gym floor banging out a high intensity interval session. It's just not feasible. The body's not going to handle it. The mind's not going to handle it. They may want to, they may be excited about it, but you've got to break it down to them a little bit slower. And that's what I always do. And I always say to people, this is where the no nonsense side gets in. If you're going on a coaching program with me, then you've got to listen to exactly what I tell you, right? Because I'm the expert. Yeah, but I know my body. No, you don't know your body. I know your body. You know your mind. All you know is what you've reprogrammed yourself in here, what your central nervous system is telling. Physiology, biology, biochemistry, endocrine system. Oh, I know it. I don't know it well because it's so complicated. Millions of chemical equations going on, but I have a better idea than most who do. So that's the first hurdle that I get really is sometimes people think they're the scientist and not myself. And sometimes it's trial and error, but usually it's just finding out what they're struggling with and what their end point is. Like I'm a big believer that if you're trying to get healthy and fit, so healthier and fitter is the first thing to do, right? To try and get as healthy and fit as me or one of my coaches or something like that, for most people, is not a very good idea. You want to get healthier than you were yesterday, healthier than you were a month ago, and so on and so forth. And in order to do that, you have to break habits one at a time, right? And then once your body gets used to that, then you can progress that further. And it sounds very simple, but our brains don't work like that because of the world we live in. We've got technology just there in our hands. Everybody wants it tomorrow. In my programs, if I'm doing a 12-week body transformation, the first 4 weeks is nothing to do with fat loss. It's fixing your digestive system. It's making sure that your liver's prime, get your body into a alkaline state. So you won't see any results. So I tell people straight, you're not going to see any. It's still going to be hard, but you're not. It's like a car, isn't it? If you've got a car and you've given it the wrong fuel and the engine's damaged, you've got to fix the engine first, right? No point in sorting out the alloy wheels and the spoiler and putting new stereo in. Still ain't going to go anywhere. Might look pretty, but yeah, that's the main hurdle that I get if I get a hurdle. Majority of people have come to me for my experience and my results, kind of what I say they do. But I do get a few people who are a little bit like, well, when I was with another personal trainer or a different coach, I did X, Y, Z. So my thing is, did you get results? Because if you did, you wouldn't be coming to see me. So let's do something different. If you keep doing the same thing, you will get the same results. So yeah, so it's a similar hurdles to yourself.
Yeah, I like what you said because what I hear you say is that people are coming. Like you pointed out that the example I gave was one where people were being told they need to change. You have some element of probably on I want to call it on the surface level that someone's self-motivated. Manjit, help me because you can help me
I
with
don't,
this.
you know what? I will a little bit disagree with you in a friendly way
Okay.
there, right? Now, people come to me because they want to change, right?
Right.
I don't say, do you want to change? Come and see me. I don't do any of that, right? I've been in the business too long for that. So I don't need new clients, so to speak, as a business, obviously I do need clients, but people come to me because they want to change. I do a consultation, which is basically an interview, right? So I interview them to find out, do they want to change? If they don't want to change, I do not take them on as a client. As simple as that, right? And I'm not a believer of motivation. I know one of my strap lines in my business is motivation, nutrition, coaching. The motivation that you will get is on the gym floor if you come to one of my sessions, one of my classes, or whatever we do at the studio, like same with your Bhangra. You'll get motivated there because the dopamine release in the head is
Mm,
amazing when you do any sort of physical activity. You can do it wrong and you'll still feel fantastic.
mm,
So you'll feel motivated. But what I tell everybody is it is nothing to do with motivation. It's to do with discipline, right?
mm,
And that's it, self-discipline. And that's what I try to teach people, that what is your goal? And we need to be disciplined to get it. Now,
mm,
I'm a very big advocate of eating junk food. Now, I might sound stupid here, right? But I'm a control freak. So
mm,
I need my clients and anyone I look after to be in control of their junk food. I want you to eat junk food because that's going to happen. No one in this world is going to eat clean forever, right? But I'm not a calorie counter believer because I'm a scientist. Science doesn't believe in that rubbish, right? So I don't believe in counting any calories. I don't even believe in weighing food. Some of my clients, depending on their goal, I may need them to weigh the food. Majority fat loss clients, we don't weigh any food, right? And all I need them to do is feel good, produce serotonin, less cortisone, more serotonin to be produced. And the way to do that is to them to allow themselves to have this junk food. I call it a cheat meal
mm,
because whoever you are, and if your goal is to be healthier, fitter, six pack, or whatever it is, by eating that processed food, you are cheating your goal, right? But if you stay in control and you get your nutrition 70% right, then we're going in the right direction, you know? So, yeah, I wouldn't say people come to me and they're already self motivated. I
mm,
say they come to me and they've made the decision already that they want change. Once you've made that change decision, you are in a different mindset. You're in
mm,
more of a growth mindset
mm,
over a fixed mindset. The fixed mindset, if I have a consultation and I see someone in a fixed mindset, I won't take them on because it's too much hard work
yeah,
for me.
mm,
I do results, nothing but results. I pride myself
mm,
on results, 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 results.
yeah,
It's a two-way thing, and if I want to get results on yourself, for example, your
mm,
head has to be in the right place. If it's not, I'm just batting in the wind. There's nothing happening.
mm, mm,
I can. What do they say? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
mm, mm,
My horse needs to see the water, needs to want the water, and needs to want to drink it, and then I'll give
mm.
it a glass. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I'll tell you how I relate to this in a way, and it's similar but different. Um, I think, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud to anyone. So if they're listening, probably I'll just speak to my wife about this. But so I'm getting caught on camera. I think that the most of the people that come to my class, or even the people who express an interest and don't actually show up, which is massive numbers, right? Like loads of people say they're going to come and don't actually come, and I have their email addresses and I'm reminding them regularly and so on. And some people do explain why as well. I get the odd email or text message, and it's like, oh, I've got two left feet, or some reason, some barrier that gets in their way, similar to what you say about is their head in the right place. And I'm a bit worried about this sort of attitude because if you think about, and I'm sure you can really help us help understand the statistics around this, like obesity and how much it's, in my mind, getting out of control, and the trajectory we're on as a society. That if everyone you've helped me realize two things: that it's a double-edged problem because on the one hand, people have an issue with attitude. Maybe that's the best way to word it. I'm not sure what language to use, but there's an attitudinal issue. It's not necessarily an intelligent issue, but it's sort of in the example I'm manifesting, the way it manifests in the example I'm giving is, oh, I've got two left feet, so I'm not going to try. Well, that's one example. But then on the other side, in the type of the way I teach Bangla with a focus on exercise, I'm the only person. Like most people are doing it for performing. Also, I'm going to ask you about some questions about this because you mentioned this earlier about this idea of performative and actually focused on results. Performative, I interpret as like not really focused on the right results, focus on sort of like hedonistic results, like how something looks, not how something really is. So to me, Bhangra performing, which is most classes, they're promoting themselves as keep fit. But what they're really interested in is how good do you look as a performer, not how good is your health. Their brain is in a certain place. Whereas my angle is the performance, let's just ditch the performance so we don't even have to think about it. There's no shows, there's no costumes, there's none of that. We go to a gym or we go to a fitness center, a room, we exercise hard, and then we forget about it. We go home. We don't go to any shows. We don't do any practice, anything that could be risky. Like you could accidentally hit somebody with it, or there's no dolls in there. There's nothing like that. It's just music focused on exercise. And I call it to the standards you would expect in a fitness center. Rather than say in a community center or something like that. Fitness centers wouldn't accept the doll playing and the different vajas and the outfits, and bare feet in a fitness center would be unacceptable to do exercise without trainers on, right? These are sort of examples I'm talking about. So then what you help me realize is, like, what if people like you and me who are trying to help people from shifting their mindset towards exercise and so on, if we're really focused on people who are in the right mindset, then what on earth are we going to do with all these people that don't have the right mindset? Like, how do we move them along? And I'd love your opinion on that. Like, maybe you've had people who've come to you and you've gone, you know what, I've talked to you, but I don't think you're in the right mindset. Tell you what, come back to me in the future or something. Maybe you've had something that you've been able to help people, almost like a consultation, and then ask them to take some time to think about it or something. Maybe, yeah, tell me what you think.
That does happen, that I'll sit down with someone and I think that their mindset's not in the right place. Um, I usually cut it dead there, if I'm going to be brutally honest.
Mm.
Sometimes I have said, do this, do that, and then come back and let me know where you're at. But you're 100% right. It's a it's it's a mindset thing, and I think I can only talk about obesity, weight management, health, fitness. When it comes to that, it's like, where is your head at? And it's again, it always boils down for me to the reason why. If you want to just look good, it's going to be difficult because the essence of getting that six pack is to be healthy. Now, don't get me wrong here. You can get people who have a six pack and they're not healthy from the inside. But majority, if you are overweight, if you are obese, clinically obese or whatever, and your aim is to come down and lose that body fat, then your goal really is to become healthy, right? And that's the foundation of what I do, right? I get everyone to be healthy. So I don't do weight loss. I don't focus on the weight at all. A byproduct of what may happen is that they may get some weight loss, but I do not focus. I don't care about the weight. I care about the adipose tissue. Are we able to get the body into oxidation of body fat? That's it. And one of the reasons why I think I do very well is that, like you said, very different to everybody else. Everyone's focusing on the calories. Everyone's focusing on high intensity interval. Everyone's focusing on drop that weight, then, pinch here. Let's see your six pack. No one actually understands the science behind oxidation of body fat. And then when I have clients who want to add muscle mass, that's a positive nitrogen cycle. No one has that understanding. And I think it all boils down to education at the end of the day. In my industry, everybody is an expert. My neighbor's a bloody expert, tells me what to do, and they're all experts because they take that much knowledge and become dangerous with it. Every single one of my degrees have taken me at least 3 years to do, and I still don't think I know enough, if I'm going to be brutally honest. For 14 years as a business, I've looked after people, and I've taken absolutely obese people, brought them down to six pack with no sagging skin. So I've seen a lot of these Netflix documentaries about if you lose that much weight, you're always going to have excess skin. You're not always. There's different ways to do it, right? And it's about getting the elasticity in your skin back and understanding how to do that. So I think it all boils down to knowledge at the end of the day, because the media tells us you can do X, Y, Z just by doing this exercise or just by eating this fruit or just by doing that. And unfortunately, like I say to a lot of people, it's an absolute giant jigsaw puzzle. And you need every single one of those pieces to finish that jigsaw puzzle off. and that's it at the end of the day. So you have to teach people the value of what they're doing or what they want to do. And if they're not willing to learn that, then they don't. My niche, the age group, is usually 35 plus. I don't take anybody under than that because usually they're not in the right mindset. Someone 35 plus, usually typical. This is, not all of my clients are like this, right? But typically they've been in their career for a while. They've worked hard in their career. They've on the back burner. They've left their health and fitness, and their body weight has gone over for what they want. They've got a little bit excess body fat. Their children are growing up, and now they want to do something about it. You know, when there's someone 18 to 25, usually they're young, they're cool, they're trendy, want to go and have a few drinks, maybe haven't got a family yet and whatever, and their mindset isn't what I want. They just want the TikTok, get onto the gym, pump a few weights, metabolism is already firing, jobs are good, and that's not the people I look after. Science helps me with the people who have had it not exercised. They're starting from scratch, where that, like we said at the beginning, where the habits are already formed, and now you have to slowly change. I'm not a believer of breaking habits. I'm a believer of changing habits. So you slowly change them. You don't break them. Breaking habits, I think, are really, really difficult to do, and that's where, from my experience, I've seen people go the opposite way. But that's just my opinion.
Uh, Hey, I like your opinion. And we started off and I introduced our conversation. I'm resonating so much with what you're saying. And I like the way you're thinking. I like the way that you know, are talking about how these transformations happen, where they start. The examples you gave also about the sorts of age groups where people that are in certain mindsets as a general rule is really interesting. And you made a few comments that I want to deep dive a little bit on. I think let's just start here. I think they relate to the knowledge point you made, but the word that comes to my mind is myths. And you gave the example, your next door neighbor will tell you what to do, or so many people. There's a term in psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is this funny, kind of hilarious phenomenon, which is that many people, when they receive just a little bit of information, they have a huge amount of confidence. And you can see it on a chart, they have a very high level of confidence. But then as they learn more information, their confidence goes down and down and down. So that's what you were describing. Like, I still don't feel super confident. But the thing that agitates you, and it agitates me as well, is the people at the early stages of the Dunning-Kruger effect who've just got very little information. They've got a lot of confidence. I have that same experience. People think they know what my class is. Oh, menu bhi pata hai कि पंगड़ा किया मैं तेरे को सिखाऊंगा किसी दा ब्याह हो रहा. So someone will say, I'm coming to your class because I want to learn for a wedding. And they're the sorts of examples of people who I'm like, tell you what, when the wedding's over, then come and see me, because I'm interested in long term. I'm not interested in you getting ready for a wedding.
Well, exactly the same. I get people come to me. I have got a holiday coming up in 6 weeks, my wedding and this where I always say after the wedding, after the holiday. Right? Simple as that.
Exactly
Because
right.
you need a different focus on it.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. And similar to you, probably, I'll say to people, look, enjoy the wedding, make the most of it. It's your wedding or, a relative's wedding or whatever. But the reason why we're here is for long-term fitness. So I hope enjoy the idea of what we're doing. Please come and get involved. And yeah, sometimes don't hear back from people, but that's just the way it is. But the key point where my thought process is going is around this word myth. So, for example, people have this myth that I observed that Bhangra is one way. It's all about putting on certain outfits. It's all about showing off on a stage. It's all about how good are you as a dancer. Your legs have got to go in the right place. Your hands have got to go in the right place. And I challenge those myths and say, well, who says? Who says you've got to go on stage? Because immediately that's a barrier for some people. Who says you've got to go with your left leg or your right leg? What difference does it make? You're still exercising. Who says you've got to pay £500 for these outfits? You're never going to use them. Just go to your local sports shop, get a decent pair of trainers, decent bottoms. So who says, right? So I'm curious from your point of view. Let's deep dive on the myths. And you said a couple of things, like you made this definition about getting more fit or more healthy, and I feel like you dissected that a little bit. So I'd love for you to see, well, what's the difference between being fitter and healthier? But then I'll touch on that. But in a moment, in case you forget, I'm going to ask you about the calorie myth. I would love to deep dive on that because I find that a fascinating subject, and I sense from you do you as well. So, yeah, talk about this difference between fitness and health.
So with the fitness, the thing is, you can break that down into lots of other little categories as well. But for me and what I advocate, right, health is your total well-being, the what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And then for me as a scientist, health is that all your organs are firing properly, your insulin isn't over spiked, your pancreas is good, your liver's working properly. To me, that's what health is, because the older then we become, the healthier you are, the longer you can live and enjoy life. I, like everybody else, work really, really hard. So when I retire, I want to enjoy my retirement. I don't want to be old and be paying for medication and so on and so forth. I want to enjoy it. I've worked very hard for what I have, or what I hopefully will have when I retire at the end. So that's the side of health that I would come. Health is also how we talk and what we listen to. That's what I think. Health is a massive subject for me. Health is massive. When it comes to fitness, being an athlete and being an extra competitor in martial arts and looking after a lot of sports people, for me, uh, fitness is sport related. It doesn't have to be, though, right? What I always say to my clients, I look after your fat loss. If you want to get fitter and stronger, I can set you homework to go and do a bit of running for a little bit longer, kick a punch bag for a lot longer, and as long as you have the basic technique, you will get fitter and you will get healthier. You'll get fitter and you will get stronger by doing those kind of repetitions. But when it comes to our health, our body adapts. It gets used to hemostasis staying the same. So you have to keep changing it. So when it comes to the nutrition, I'm changing virtually everyone's nutrition every 4 weeks. It's change, 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 change. And when it comes to the fitness side of things, for a lot of my clients, I don't really change anything. You just got to do more and more and more. Stay safe, stay healthy, but do more and more and more. So that's a basic way I would separate the two, with health and the fitness. That's
Very
my
nice.
kind of take out of it.
Well, I love your thoughts on this because, I mentioned to you that I work in technology, and in the early days, so we're sort of talking 2003, 2004. Actually, let me step back. So as the years have passed, um, probably around 2016, 2017, I think you want, I was reflecting on this idea of what does the word fitness mean? And I think to a lot of people, fitness automatically means super fit, your bulging muscles and all this sort of stuff. That's where their mind goes. It's almost like the certain men's magazines and women's magazines, right? They dominate people's narrative and their way of thinking about what the word fit means. And I've always had an issue with this because when I used to in the technology industry, the terminology we used to use when we used to get technology ready was we would have a milestone known as the fitness test or the fit for purpose or whatever, and that
Yeah.
didn't mean that the technology is exceptional. That meant, is the technology ready to use? Is it fit for purpose? So where I come at it from is when I hear the word fit, my brain biases towards that, which is fit means, or fitness means, are you fit enough? And you touched on goals. Are you fit enough for your goal? So if your goal is to run a marathon and you can't run a marathon, you're not fit for that goal. But as soon as you can, you're fit for that goal. So I think of it almost like a very literal sense of the word fit, something fits into something. Um, but like I say, this is a myth that I like to challenge people to think, that I think people think, oh, I'll never get fit because fit is some thing that's high up there in the sky, and I'll never get there. So I'm glad you touched around that. And, I do want to go on to the calorie conversation because you mentioned about endocrinic um, in some of what you were describing. And I often say to people, people get really caught up on calories, and I say, there's a few theories around fat gain and fat loss. Well, by the way, I prefer to say fat storage and fat release. trying to get people to think about fat in a not in a burn. I try to avoid this, and I'm curious to know your opinion on this, because I think people think, oh, I'll come to your class, I get hot and I just burn the fat, it just melts off my body, right? This is the, so I say to no, 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 you have to stop thinking of it like fat burning. You have to start thinking of it like your body's releasing the fat. It's just a subtle sort of thing. But this is how I connect to fat. But I'm also in a very much agreement with you. At the end of a class, someone says, "Oh, look at my fitness tracker. I've done 500 calories," and they expect me to be a bit sort of happy for them. And of course I am. And my first reaction is, "Oh, well done." By the way, don't focus too much on the calories, right? And then they're usually surprised. Like, isn't that important or something? Not as important as I think it. You think it is, and I think it's. Anyway, I'm just giving you a little bit of background from my point of view. But I get the sense from you that you don't value too much. Maybe you can put it in better words for me if I've got this wrong. You don't value too much calorie counting, whether it's from the consumption point of view or the I burnt so many calories on the treadmill point of view. But tell us, am I right? And what's caused you to come to this, from a scientific point of view? I mean, it's probably a massive question. That could probably take some time. But give us what you can, and then what should people consider most important? And my guess is that calories is like on a hierarchy of importance. It's not completely unimportant, but it's not at the top. That's my assumption. So my question to you, is that right? And if so, what would you put at the top from a metrics point of view? What should people measure?
Right. When it comes to calories, we're going to need another podcast if I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Right. But I personally am not a calorie believer for the nutrition aspect. Right. A calorie is an energy system. And a lot of these people who are advocating calories, you've got to burn this calorie, whatever, all that kind of stuff. They don't even know what an actual calorie is. So I always say to people, what are you counting? Calories. Yeah, well, what are they? I need 450,000 or whatever, or I don't know. I've got no idea how many calories they need or what they want, but they're like, I need this many calories, I need that many calories. Off what? What are you actually counting? Your little watch has said you've burnt, and again, we'll talk about burn in a minute, right? You've burnt, 15,000 calories already by walking up the stairs or something. But calories of what? I always say to them, go to your PT or go to someone and ask them, what is a calorie? What actually is the calorie? And you know what? In very, very simple terms, what a calorie is, it's the energy that your body needs to use up 1 gram of water in 1 degree Celsius. That's it. Nothing to do with food. Nothing. Right? And the media, I believe, and I do think the government, this is where I might get shot down, the media, the government, all of them have done it because everyone now is a nutrition expert by just counting calories. The body is so complicated. I've spent years trying to study the body, right? It's not a calculator. It honestly isn't as simple as calories in, calories out. Because if it was, that's what the doctors wouldn't do any surgery. That's it. They'll just tell you calorie in, calorie out. And it may work like that when you're younger because your natural metabolic rate is going crazy anyway, right? But as we get older, our lung functions and our liver functions and everything slow down, and we've got to keep that going. We're clogging our system by eating heavily processed foods. And unfortunately, the world that we live in, that we've cultivated food, we've done medications, we've become God, or we're doctors, and we keep people alive so much longer. The population is so much bigger. If everybody ate clean, there would not be enough food in the world. So we have to eat processed foods. But the way I think big corporate companies are doing it is like they were doing in medication, if I'm honest. That's why I moved out of it. Is what they're doing is they're trying to get people to eat food which is now labeled as healthy because its numbers are low. And the most important thing right at the top is the ingredient. What is in it? So new clients, I always say, they say, Manjit, can I eat this? And they'll show me something like that, and it will say low fat, I don't know, protein, Weetabix or something. I don't know. I made that up. Doesn't have to be Weetabix. It can be any cereal. Low fat, high in protein, right? Because that's what everybody is focusing on in the media. Low fat, high in protein. But exactly how you said, Ravi, right? Fat cells are just energy stores. You can't burn fat. If you were to burn anything in your stomach, you would be dead. You can't burn anything. You'll be dead. It's fat loss. A lot of people don't even know where fat loss goes and what happens to it. And I gave it away just there, right? It's a massive chemical reaction in the body, and basically your adipose tissue, your fat cell, gets converted into gas. The gas then comes out of your mouth. That's why I talk a lot, right? So the gas comes out of your mouth. You don't sweat it out. If you have a medical problem, your thyroids are wrong, or something's up, then yeah, maybe you can urinate fat sometimes if there's something wrong with you. Yeah, you can take discrete fat out as a number two in the bathroom if there's something wrong with you, or if you've taken some chemicals that force the body to change it around biochemically to make that do that. But the average person, the normal person who has got nothing wrong with them, they're going to use fat for energy. Their body has to be in what's called oxidative state. So it's using oxygen to use fat for energy, and then it will turn into a gas and it will come out from our mouth. As simple, he says, as that. So when it comes to counting the calories, I don't know what people are counting. It's just numbers that to majority of us ain't going to make any difference. And I get a lot of ladies who are menopausal, and they come up to me and they say the doctor says calorie counting is not going to work for me, and I'm like, yeah, ain't going to work for anyone as far as I'm concerned. And they're like, well, I've tried it and I can't lose weight and I can't do this and I can't do that. And you know what? All I do in a nutshell, I get people to understand how to eat good, clean food. That's it. Obviously, I do what's called combing of the diet, which is putting different food groups together to convert. So the body does something different. So a carbohydrate does something different to you. Protein does something different to you. Protein and a carb together, they do something different. It's that kind of complication, not too much. And that's what I teach people. I get them to learn and understand that. When it comes to the calories, all you're fighting is numbers. And when you're young, what you're doing is you're starving yourself. You're dropping your calories. You're starving yourself. You're not giving yourself all the right nutrients. A lot of people do this ketosis diet where the body produces ketones, and if you do that for too long, you can get ketoacidosis, which will kill you. And that kind of stuff I'm very, very, very much against. I have done it myself. And I'm a big believer. This is where the scientist of me comes in, that, anything that I want to know about, I want to try it first, figure it out, see how it works, and then on my coaches, I'll try it out on them as well, because we're all different. Ethnicity plays a part, age plays a part, mindset plays a part, so there's no one rule that fits all. But when it comes to calorie counting, and everyone can feel free to have a look at my web pages and look at the thousands of transformations that I've done and myself. Not one single person counted I won't swear, one calorie, right? No need to. You don't need to. You can if you want to. Not stopping anyone. There's loads of people out there. There's professional bodybuilders I know that do that. Their body works in a very different way because of the supplements that they use, so they can get away with some of the foods that we do. I mentioned earlier that, people come to me and they show me something and say, high protein, Manjit, high protein. One of the myths of adding muscle mass is you need lots and lots of protein. Your body's only going to assimilate and digest and utilate a certain amount of protein, right? There isn't a number. I can't tell you any number on it because it's to do with the ethnicity, genetics, your current health, your current metabolic rate, and where you are in your fitness and all. There's loads of variables, right? But it doesn't need a lot of protein in order to get big muscles. Now, I'm not very big. There's no one standing next to me, so you can't tell. And in my photos, when I'm standing by myself, I get very, very, very lean. It's an optical illusion. I look like a WWF wrestler, but I'm 5'7", and 85 kilos. That's it, because genetically, that's my size. That's just what I am. If I wanted to get big boy muscles and my shoulders bigger than my head, like some people have, then unfortunately, that's anabolic steroids. The body's completely different. Your endocrine gets changed, everything gets changed. Your body, then you can eat all these loads and loads of calories and you'll stay lean and you'll stay like that. When I do a bulk, and I'm on a maintenance phase for myself at the moment. I've got a very big birthday coming up next November. So when I add a little bit of muscle mass, I'm going to shred it all back down. So someone doing it who's a little bit older, let's go my age group again, 35 plus. And yes, I am way over the 35 plus. But when you get to that kind of age and you're trying to add muscle mass, you will add body fat. That's a fact. What makes you increase your muscle mass is your body's testosterone. And that's what some of these, all of the pro bodybuilders do, is they inject testosterone. No one injects protein. No one goes to get a protein shake and suck it out and bang and put it wherever they want to put it. Right? Nobody does that. It's testosterone or human growth hormones, you know. And that's what I tell people. I said, forget about focusing too much on the protein. I get all these youngsters, I see them on the TikTok. You need 1 gram of protein per body weight of your body weight and blah, blah. No, you just need to eat well throughout the day and you will be fine. Trust me. In order for your muscles to respond, you got to put stress on them. And one of the things that I'm a big advocate of is what's called time over tension, what everyone talks about, no one really understands. And that's slowing the technique down and getting your mind to understand what's happening to, let's say we're doing biceps, what's happening to your bicep head? You extend the muscle, you contract the muscle. Just focus on that. The speed and the tempo should be slow. And I have my eyes closed when I do that. And I've got foot injuries up here at the moment. But if you've ever seen the human body where you can see just the muscle tissue and the bone structure and you don't see the skin layer, right? I imagine that in my head, and I can see the muscle tissue lengthen, contract. If I'm doing chest, lengthen, contract, and that's the important thing. Take your time and feel what's going on. Eat clean food, and that's it. They're the two magic things. I do believe everyone, including myself, you need a coach to keep you accountable, right? To keep you moving forward. Your classes, for example, yourself and your instructors, if they weren't there, people won't do them. It's simple as that. If I don't have a gym partner, I won't hit that gym floor. Most of my day is in my studio, and I've got loads of equipment. I've got equipment that some gyms don't have. It's accountability at the end of the day, isn't it, to keep people focused onto their nutrition and their exercise.
Well, I'm glad you touched on accountability because actually, before I make the comment about accountability, there's a few ideas I have. You mentioned earlier on we could do another podcast about calories. You touched a little bit. We won't have time today, I think, around ethnicities, and I would love to focus on maybe even a whole podcast, maybe on the South Asian community.
I've done
right?
a lot of research. My
Right.
MSc had a lot of that in there. What I specialized in was basically scarpophenia. Scarpophenia is a loss of muscle mass through age, and what I did with part of my MSc was obesity, scarpophenic obesity, where what we're finding now is scarpophenia, loss of muscle mass, isn't just happening through age, right? It's now happening because of obesity. So where years ago, scarpophenia used to happen in your 70s, 80s, right? And now typically we're seeing it in our 40s, 50s, But then what has been seen with obesity, especially in child obesity, that they're getting scarpophenia, loss of muscle mass, natural loss, in a younger age. I think there's reported, don't quote me on this, she was either 8 or 13-year-old girl in China that got obese. So her muscles started deteriorating and losing at the age of 13 or 8. I can't remember the age now. And that's horrendous because we need our muscles to do this. You don't have to have big muscles and lift weight, just to walk, to pick up a shopping, to cuddle our children. We need muscles to do everyday things. And people always think that muscles or these great massive things like that. They're not. They're just to keep your life going. I'm vain, you know. When I go to Seaside, I want my abs out. I want my pecs bouncing around. That's just what I want for me, you know. And if that's what people want, then I say fair play to them. But what you're doing is, and I say to people, uh, my body itself is deformed. I've added more muscle mass than it should really have. My muscle to fat ratio is very, very high. Right at this moment, it's not as high as I want it, but we're never happy. Does that make sense?
It does, Manjit. And I've got one more area of inquiry for you. So people may be interested by this point. My hope is people listening or watching have got this far and gone, yeah, you know what? I've worked with other people and they're not I'm not feeling like they're telling me the right thing. But when I've heard Manjit speak, I feel like he's got this wisdom, right? I feel like he's got this understanding. He's going to tell me how it is, and I need someone like him to keep me accountable. So my question is, first of all, could people who are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube and stuff, could they contact you? What can they expect, in terms of the sort of questions that you would ask? How can people get your help, essentially? What would you say to those people?
The first thing I would say is if you're after a lifestyle change, that's what I do. You know, the byproduct of that can be flat stomach, it can be six pack, it can be putting your diabetes in remission, bringing your blood pressure down. You know, I'm qualified for all of that kind of stuff, slowing down osteoporosis, anything like that. If that's what you're after, then yeah, I can help you with that. That's not a problem. The best way to contact me with there is my webpage, which is www.absolutelyfit.co.uk. And then I'm on all the social platforms. I have somebody else running them because I'm too old to understand how they work. But I am on the Instagram. I think that's absolutely fit UK, or it might be absolutely fit studio.
I'll put them in the show
And
notes, so
Yeah,
everyone will be
okay,
able to read
brilliant.
it. So yeah.
And then there's a Facebook as well, Absolutely Fit Studio, Absolutely Fit Online, and then if you want, just search Manjit Singh Dol. So I have got my own page. This is what I look after, my own page, and my own page is just real life because that's who I am. You know, I'm at Alton Towers at the weekend, so I'll be posting me at Alton Towers and my life. You know, I will take some food with me so you'll get to know what kind of things that I eat, and then I will have a cheat meal. I do little videos and explain. Sometimes I fancy a hot dog, right? And I will have one. And if I don't fancy a hot dog and I have decided I'm having a cheat meal, then where we stay near Alton Towers, there is a TGI Fridays. I'll go there and have a steak and chips, you know. And so my uh, Manjit Singh Dol page will just have reality of what's going on. Obviously, the business pages, all they have is results, results, results. This is what this person did, does, or that person did, blah, 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 blah. You know, but if you want to contact me, all good. Ravi said, it is a little bit no nonsense. I always give everybody just a qualifying questions first because I'm serious. If you take me on as your coach, I am getting you results. I'm going to put a lot of effort, a lot of energy in it. I've got a lot of knowledge. I am more qualified in obesity and weight management than at least 90% of people watching this podcast, doctor, GP, than your GPs. There's only two in the whole of the whole of the UK who have my qualification. One of them taught me, you know. So qualification wise, all good. Application of knowledge is all good, but it all boils down to effort levels, you know. And I'm not a TikToker that says, "Come and join my plan, 20 quid, and I'll give you what I give everybody else," and off you go. You know, everything's bespoke. Everything's about the individual. I'm going to put a lot of effort in, and if you're prepared to listen, to apply, and then want to move forwards, then that's good. Then I'm all good for it. But if you're not prepared to do any of that, then I'm not your guy. I'll be honest with you. It's yeah, you won't like me because I won't take you on.
Thanks, Manjit. Um, that brings us to the end of the episode. And seriously, you've given me so many ideas for other things that we can talk about. But my hope is that mostly people are listening and they hear that no nonsense thing. They're very much about, okay, I'm going to get in contact with Manjit. Um, See if you can help them out. So it'll be really great. This video will be on YouTube. People will be able to listen to it on Spotify. They'll be able to listen to it on Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Audible, all these sorts of platforms. So
You
if
know
you've
that
been
means nothing to me. I know what Apple Music is. I listen to my Bhangra on that. That's about it.
Yeah, but I just like the way podcasts work, and people on their different systems can listen. And and the
Mm.
other thing I like about podcasts is you can stop and start them. You can listen to them in the car. You can, uh, you know, um, so it's my real hope that people who've made it this far, it takes a lot of perseverance to make it this far into a conversation. I think it's so easy to get distracted by TikTok is a good example. It's short form videos. So people who are listening, and if you've taken the time to really listen to this from a long form point of view, and I thank you for that, and I think Manjit thanks you for that as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Manjit, thank you as well for joining me today. Remember, everybody, not everything is as it seems, especially when you look at it on a superficial point of view or from, as Manjit's saying, from what the media likes to tell you. There are people who have a deep level of expertise that you can seek help from. But just remember, their deep level of expertise gets them to a certain point where they know how to cut through the noise. They know that there's all of this sound and there's all this nonsense. They know how to cut straight through it. And Manjit is one of those guys. So get in contact with him, follow him on the platforms. Find out what he's doing at Alton Towers and what he ends up eating, and that in itself is coaching, right? So, and then if you follow him closely enough, and you're like, okay, I need to talk to this guy, then this is the perfect sort of way to softly follow him and receive. I almost want to call it like soft coaching. So, thanks very much, Manjit. Good speaking to you, and speak to you again really soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me on. Thanks a lot. Cheers.